Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff, and I'm in my French hotel room again. I hope this is the last video that I will be making in France because I'm supposed to be going back to the United States on the 12th, so everything should be returning back to normal and I won't have to deal with this type of thing anymore. So if you hear people talking, babies crying, I really hope not. You'll know why. I'm in a hotel room. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the Galaxy Tab S today. This is the 10.5 version. I want to give my first impressions of it, and then later on I want to get more into depth. Now, I don't want to get hefty-duty into talking about this tablet until I can check out the 8.4 version. Also, I'm really curious in checking out the LTE version because it has the Snapdragon 800 SoC inside of it instead of Samsung's own Exynos, which I really have to say, at least talking about performance, I'll talk a little bit more about it. I'm not so impressed with their own chipset. So before I get into the basic good, bad, and uglies about this device, I really wanted to take a chance to thank my sponsors over at audible.com so much for making content creation possible and also making it possible to purchase devices like these. Because honestly, I have to purchase a lot of devices when I'm reviewing things. So if you don't know who Audible is, they are a leading online provider of audiobooks. They have over 150,000 downloadable titles from every genre that I can think of. An interesting one that I'm seeing lately is where celebrities read literature. There's this one book that a lot of you are probably aware of. It's called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I saw that it was being narrated by Elijah Wood. It's being narrated by Frodo, so I just had to check it out. I've listened to it. He's so talented. He's doing all kinds of different Southern accents, all kinds of Southern twang, stuff like that. So he does an excellent job. He's brought a lot of life to the book, and I really recommend checking it out. So if you're interested in checking out Huckleberry Finn, narrated by Elijah Wood, follow audible.com/Erica. You can download the book for free and also try Audible service. And if for whatever reason you don't like the book, you're free to exchange it at any time without any arguments or issues. So follow audible.com/Erica to get your free book. And also they are an Amazon company, so you just sign in easily with your Amazon information. I really recommend it. It's been a lot of fun, so check it out. So for dramatic effect, I have placed the tablet back in its box. We're going to open it up. I'll show you what it comes with, although it's all not that interesting. Samsung doesn't give a boatload of things. So what I've got here is the Wi-Fi model, and sadly, all the Wi-Fi models are the Exynos SoC. So if you're interested in the Snapdragon 800 SoC, you need to get an LTE variant. Right now in Europe and elsewhere abroad, I see that it is available to get an LTE variant for that Snapdragon 800. But in the United States, I see that it's lagging behind because, of course, I would assume that carriers need to get their grubby hands on them and to put a monumental boatload of crapware so that they can approve them out to the public. So I have no idea when in the United States we're going to see the Snapdragon 800 versions. So what we've got here is an octa-core CPU, although I don't really know if it's that fair to call it an octa-core CPU because the way Samsung has it implemented is with two different clusters. You've got a A15 4-core cluster clocked at 1.9 gigahertz, and then you've also got an A7 cluster with 4 cores clocked at 1.3 gigahertz. So all 8 cores are not ever working at the same time. It's picking between the A15 cluster or the A7 cluster, and they don't even interchange. It doesn't say 2 clusters from A15, 2 clusters from A7. It's not working that way. And then what we have with the Snapdragon 800 is a quad-core CPU clocked at 2.3 gigahertz. It's got the Adreno 330 GPU. Both of these have 3 gigabytes of RAM. The 10.5-inch version has a 7,800 milliamp hour battery inside of it. Let's go ahead and open the box. So it's as simple as just pulling it out, like so. I've lost my tab. Just tip it out. Whoa! Everything just fell out of the box. So graceful. Just kind of drop that stuff back in there. No one will notice. So we've got a couple pieces of information. You've got a USB 2.0 cable, and then you've got your charging connector. This is the European version because I'm in France right now. You've got some earbuds, and then you've got earbud replacements for different sizes. And that's it. That is all that's in the box. For the adapter here, it always makes me sad that we've only got a 2-amp charger. A 2-amp charger to charge a 7,900 milliamp hour battery is just no bueno. So just pushing all of that aside, they have the device itself in a little sleeve. And you can see that I've got the bronze version. It's got this brownish black. I'm not really sure what color this is actually. I guess it's bronze as well. The whole thing looks bronze. And I thought it was terribly ugly, but actually it's growing on me. It's really not so bad. Another thing that I find impressive about this tablet is that even though it's all plastic, and that's something that we hear a lot about, plastic, iPads, they're so much better quality. Well, what's nice is that this is very, very light, and it's also very thin. With that AMOLED display, it is a nice, thin, very light device, and for a 10.5-inch device, I have found this very easy to carry around. I've got these little hands, and this is actually pretty easy to carry around. It's pretty easy to type on for me. So despite its size, it has not been cumbersome to use, and I'm grateful for that. It's really nice to have a display this size and a tablet that I can actually manage. The first thing that I want to point out is that since this is a tablet that is considered part of the Galaxy S series, just like the Galaxy S5, it does have that fingerprint scanner, so you can unlock the tablet with the fingerprint scanner. One gripe that I had with the fingerprint scanner on a phone was that for people who've got smaller hands, it's kind of hard to swipe your finger and unlock the device. But on a tablet, you're going to be using two hands anyway. So for me, it's not as insulting. On the front here, we have a 2.1 megapixel camera with a proximity sensor beside it. On the back, you have an 8 megapixel camera with a single LED flash, so it's nice that you've got the single LED flash there. I haven't had a chance to test out the camera, but I played with the camera on the Tab Pro 8.4, and the image quality is actually really nice. It's probably the same sensor as the Note 2. So we've got some capacitive buttons along the bottom, and something that I want to mention about those buttons on the bottom is that, yes, I know that there is a big following of people with Samsung who really enjoy those capacitive buttons and also the hardware button at the bottom, but it's actually getting a bit old. It's in the way, honestly. There are so many times where I'm trying to hold it, or I'm playing a game and I want to just hit a back button on the bottom here instead of having to reach up and awkwardly press here. Really, I think that these hardware buttons on a tablet are just outdated. They need to go. If you like them, great. Don't hurt me. Seriously, I'm just telling you that that's one thing that I find to be a bit irritating when using this tablet, is that instead of having some nice on-screen buttons so I can get out of applications, I have to awkwardly reach up, and sometimes I just touch them and activate them, and it gets ugly sometimes. So on the top of the device, we've got an IR blaster, we've got our volume rocker, and our power button. On the left side, we've got a standard headphone jack and also a speaker. On the right-hand side, we've got another speaker. We've got the micro SD card slot, which is expandable up to 128 gigabytes. And then we've got a USB 2.0 charging port. Some things to say about the speakers is that they are okay, although I'm a little bit disappointed in the way that they sound. They're not very bassy at all. I couldn't have expected more out of the speakers. They're okay. Then on the back, we've got these things here, these button things that are just so fun to touch. And you touch them all the time, and they just sit there. What they are is that you put a back cover into these. The back cover has a magnet that keeps it in place. I think I actually want to get one of those back covers. It's very iPad reminiscent. But otherwise, I've just got these two buttons to press all the time. So talking a little bit about performance, which is something that I have hinted at, I'm sadly not so impressed with the performance here. I know that we've got a very pixel-dense display, but what I can see is that the GPU has a little bit of a hard time handling all of the pixels on this display. So when going through menus or opening and closing apps, I do see a little bit of lag. I wouldn't say a little bit of lag. I would say in comparison to other devices, other Samsung devices, that it's got a lot of bit of lag. One thing I don't want to say is that it's a terrible experience. I would not say stay away from this device because we are having some lags and stutters. But it's just something to be aware of because you might be coming from a flagship phone that's very speedy, very fast. And the experience does feel a little bit different on here. Underneath developer options, I go underneath GPU rendering profile, show on screen as bars. And this is just a very simple diagnostic tool to see how smooth it is. You can see that these lines here, once they go up above this bar, which represents 16 milliseconds, After the 16 milliseconds, you drop a frame. And so every time you see the bar going up higher, it represents several frames that are being dropped. And I do see that quite a bit from time to time. We do have times where it's performing smoothly, and then there are times that it seems to choke up more. So don't be expecting a flagship phone smooth experience. But still, it's definitely okay. So I'm really curious about the Snapdragon 800 variant because I wonder if it does a little bit better in terms of handling how many pixels are on this display. I've got a Tab Pro 8.4 and it's got pretty much the same resolution here, and I'm not seeing it doing this much lagging. And as for the Tab S 8.4 variant, it's got all the same innards and everything. It's the same resolution display, it's just not stretched this far outward. So when I go to play with that one, I'm expecting the same performance and same lagginess that I am seeing here. One other thing that really concerns me about the Exynos SoC is that it's not capable of decoding 4K video. If you remember when they released the Galaxy Note 3, they had two different versions. They had the Exynos version and then they had the Snapdragon 800 version. And the people with the Exynos variant were not able to record in 4K and neither were they able to play it back. So it's the same thing that we're seeing here. Same type of chipset. And that's really unfortunate because we have a lot of people who have a Galaxy Note 3. We've got a lot of people who have a Galaxy S5 or other devices that record in 4K and they can't play them back on this big display. Of course, that was one of my first thoughts. Hey, I just have this 4K video. I don't want to get out my laptop. I just want to use the thumb drive here and I want to see what it looks like on a Quad HD-like display. But no, you can't do that. Although, of course, the bittersweet thing is that with the LTE variant, you have the Snapdragon 800 SoC inside of it. So just like with the Galaxy Note 3, you should be able to play those 4K videos on it. So what happens, you say, when you try to play back a 4K video? Well, just to let you know, this is not the stock player. This is MX Player Pro. When I go like this, I can say start over. And you hear the audio, but you're just not seeing any video. Of course, if you want to, you can use software decoding, but that's just silly because this device is not capable of such a thing. All it does is lag and the audio stops. It's really not a good experience at all. So if you try this underneath the Samsung stock player, all you're going to see is this. So you can see that it tells you that the codec is not supported, but it does play the audio back as well. So this makes me a very sad Erica. It's got a very big, beautiful display, and I can't even take advantage of that. Now as for gameplay, thankfully it's not a bad experience at all. It's not as smooth as I would like it to be. I do notice some frame drops. It's not as smooth as some other flagship Android phones, but it's really not a bad experience. Still, games are very playable. So now I want to get into the star player of this device, which is the display. I'm sure if you got this device, the display had some factor in you purchasing it because I'm sure you didn't purchase it for the performance. So let's talk a little bit about this display. I don't want to go into huge detail because I want to save that for later. But right now I want to say that I am impressed, and there's a couple of reasons for that. If at all you can stand the size of the 10.5 inch, I recommend getting the 10.5 inch version because finally we have an AMOLED display that's not pentile. Galaxy Note 2 was the last Samsung AMOLED display that was non-pentile. It was S-Stripe RGB. Same thing here. So this device looks very, very, very sharp. We finally have 3 subpixels per pixel. We're not left with 2 subpixels per pixel, which knocks down the overall resolution, and you can tell. So this is impressive. But if you go with the 8.4 version, you are left with the diamond pentile matrix, just like we have on the Note 3, the Galaxy S4, the Galaxy S5. If you like how those displays look, it'll probably be just fine for you. I have not yet seen the Tab S 8.4, but I'm assuming that the resolution looks somewhere like on the Galaxy Note 3 in terms of sharpness. So the better display is definitely this one. I don't even have to see the other one to know that. Another thing that I am impressed about is the screen uniformity. What I mean by that is that I have seen a lot of AMOLED displays, and in that time I've seen displays that are more blue at the top, they're yellowish at the bottom, they just don't look even at all. And this display is beautiful. It looks really, really nice. I think Samsung did a good job here. I hope that this is a representative sample of the whole set of devices because they did a good job. With the Galaxy S5, I've seen a couple of them that have an issue with them being blue at the top and yellow at the bottom or vice versa. So I was worried that I might see that same thing on here, but no, this looks really great. I am very, very impressed here. So what's to love about an AMOLED display? Well, first and foremost, you have LED in there, which is light emitting diode, which means every pixel is like its own little light bulb. So instead of having a backlight that's shining through filters in a display like an LCD, every pixel is independent and you don't have to worry about light bleed. When you have tablets with an LCD display, I see a lot of the time that there are light bleeds around the corner or around the sides, and that becomes very irritating as the display size gets bigger. But no such thing is going to happen to you on an AMOLED display. So that is a definite plus. And the blacks are just absolutely insane. So just say, like I'm mentioning, the light bleeds. If you are watching a movie that's on an LCD display, on a tablet display, you can see those light bleeds peeking in here and there as you're watching your movie and it's disturbing you. But with an AMOLED display, it's actually black. Those pixels are off, or at least as off as they can be. So I'm able to watch videos and shows without being interrupted by any type of light bleed, and that's just awesome on this size of display. Now, of course, this display doesn't come without its issues. I want to turn the lights off. I've got an image that I'm going to show here. Let's go ahead and turn these off and I will readjust the exposure. There we go. The exposure is adjusted. What you can see here is an image. And what this image shows is what's happening with shadows or areas of an image or areas of a movie when things get near black or black. So what you can see is it goes from 21 and it goes all the way down to 0. And it's a gradient. So in shadows, you see something as a lighter color like this 21, this darker gray, and it goes down and down and down until it's black, which is supposed to be 0. You should be able to see all the way down until 0, but you can see here it goes 21, downward, downward, downward. It looks okay, but then you hit 3, and after 3, everything is black. So essentially, everything after 3, all of those details in the shadows that are after 3 are just black. So it's clipped after 3. So when you look at dark scenes, it becomes a little bit frustrating because what you end up seeing is something that's a lighter area, and then instead of it fading out to black, it just goes from the lighter area to black, suddenly large area of black, and it looks really weird. In a couple of ads, Samsung just completely brags about how good their display looks, that their shadows are really good, but honestly, this issue with the shadows has been going on for many, many, many years. They just can't get this thing with the blacks to look right. I want to show you some examples of what that looks like in real life. So here we have an example of a frame of the movie Gravity, where we have Sandra Bullock floating into space. And you can see in here, when it goes to black, it's not doing a very good job. It goes from a dark gray to suddenly black. So you've got these areas that are these black pixelated looking areas. And I'm trying to do it justice on camera to show you exactly what this looks like. But in person, it's definitely more disturbing than it looks here. It's like, why didn't they just do it right? What is wrong here? Another annoying example that I can see quite often is what's seen on House's head here. So you have a normal scene, and in his hair you're supposed to have areas of shadow, but instead you can see that there are weird black regions. And it tends to get worse when the bitrate of a video is worse. But still, when streaming video or watching Netflix, this is something to watch out for. It's something that I see really often. So now I want to talk a little bit about the screen modes. There's 3 different screen modes. You can use whichever one strikes your fancy. I don't want to heavily get into measurements. Actually, I don't want to really look at measurements right now. I'd rather just talk about them a little bit. I want to make a separate video where I really try to show these things later on. So we've got 3 different modes. You've got the AMOLED Cinema mode, AMOLED Photo mode, and the Basic mode. Normally in the past, anything that was a cinema mode would be the most sane in terms of saturation because AMOLED displays often are seen as very oversaturated. That's because Samsung has a AMOLED display with a very wide range of colors, and then they oversaturate the colors on top of it. So now, just don't be fooled, the cinema mode is actually not the sane mode anymore. It's actually the insane mode, I'd like to call it. So what it does is it adds a lot more contrast. Let's just go from basic. You can see that the blues actually really change here. So not only do you add saturation, but they're actually messing with the gamma as well, so it's making the image darker. So you can see that the blue just becomes a completely different blue. So that's nice if you want to see high contrast in an image and extreme saturation. It creates an interesting effect. I wouldn't say that it works great for all content because some things end up looking really weird, skin tones end up looking weird, some things end up looking too dark. So remember that image I showed you that had 21, which was gray, all the way down to 0. So in this mode, instead of it being blacked out after 3, it's actually blacked out after 4. So they are doing a lot of processing here, and they do this by Samsung's MDNIE, which is the Mobile Digital Natural Image Engine. And that's how each of these are adjusted. Actually, you can do this at just touching this. You can mess around with the MDNIE settings. So think about the AMOLED cinema mode as the insane mode. Brings heavy contrast, lots of saturation. It's interesting looking, but that's about it. Then you've got the AMOLED photo mode. Now I warn photographers, if you want to get this tablet because you've been told that it has a gamut that's Adobe RGB, please don't be fooled. I used a spectrocolorimeter and I looked to see what the gamut coordinates actually are, and they are not Adobe RGB. So I found that to be a little bit frustrating because Samsung's marketing on their YouTube channel says it has the Adobe RGB range of colors. And that's just poo. They don't know what they're talking about. And then you have their website, which says something a little different. It says that it reaches 90% of the Adobe RGB natural color palette, or whatever it says. So no, the coordinates are not Adobe RGB. So that's just to let you know. And then we've got the basic mode, which I measured as well. And it's still not color accurate. And still with all of these modes, actually, they put the gamma a little bit too high. So there is no accurate mode on this device. What I'm saying here is not to tell you not to like any of these modes. I think that a lot of them look quite interesting. They give a nice effect. They really pop. So I'm not telling you don't like it. I'm just telling you, yeah, what's going on here and there. And there are some other media sources that are saying, yes, it's completely accurate to Adobe RGB, or yes, the basic mode is completely accurate to sRGB. No, it's not. So like it as much as you want, but there are just some things that I've had to point out. So this display is interesting, it's very pretty, and I think they did a really good job with the technology. I wouldn't look to this display for color accuracy. I don't really think that's the point anyway. What it does is it grants an experience, and in a lot of circumstances, it's a really good experience. It's something that's kind of supernatural. It's something that you don't really see in real life. So far, I think it's a really nice tablet. I'm really not commending it for its performance, but I definitely am for its display. I know that people are going to see this as the best tablet display on the market, and in some ways I have to agree because there is no issue with light bleeding, and I can tell you that I get so annoyed when I try to watch movies in the dark and I've got light bleeding from the sides and it's just ruining the experience. So yeah, that's a great thing. It's very, very light. It's very, very thin. It's easy to manage. Even as a small person myself, because it is so light, I can easily type on it. So I do recommend it. Just keep in mind some of those gripes that I am pointing out so far in terms of performance. If you're somebody who's going to get annoyed by the issues with the shadows, you might want to just stay with an LCD display that doesn't have those issues. But overall, so far, I think it's a nice experience, and I really want to get my hands on some other versions so I can really educate myself with this product here. And then I'd like to tell you guys what I find. So stay tuned. I do want to talk more about the calibration. There is a Samsung ad that I really want to attack because I watched it and just couldn't believe the misleading information. But that's marketing, and I see all kinds of marketing snakes for just about every company, so that's not excusing it, but it's very, very common. And I kind of make myself a tech vigilante so that I can give you the proper information the best way that I can. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it when you come back and join me again. Please check out the link in the description to get to my Google Plus page. I will also try to put an annotation here so you can click on that, because I put a lot of updates on Google Plus. I talk about a lot of things when I don't have a chance yet to put them into a video review. So make sure to check out the Google Plus link. Please ask any other questions that you have. I do want to check out the 8.4 version. This is not done yet. I still have more to research. So let me know what your questions are, and thank you everyone. Have a good night.